So, were you guys surprised that we really got no type of announcements at E3 as far as like fighting games? Starting with you, Mr. Gaming Lift.
I'm actually not surprised to be honest, man. The past few years of E3 have just kind of been lackluster to me overall. And then this year was really no different. And this is just my personal take, my personal opinion on how I felt about most of E3 um, overall. And the fact that we didn't get a fighting game, it's like I was one of the ones hoping to get a morsel, a smidgen of some hope of something NBC for something, like Rexon said. Even Street Fighter, Capcom had their little conference, and it's like I would have liked to seen something Street Fighter, something like. I think what didn't like Warner Bros. Had theirs like there was nothing MK. I'm like I know people bring up they say the argument is like, well, there's already a lot of fighting games with, and I know that I think Rexon shared the same sentiment. Is like, aren't there a lot of other games already? Like, aren't there a 500 million living shooting games already? And you keep making those, So the fighting game, if anything, is a game that they have, the least, right? Because it's still niche compared to everything else. Um, and I guess people say, well, if we're playing these games, we won't have to like. Come on, people gonna play what they want to play. People play these other games. They play a lot of stuff. So, yeah, I'm not surprised if you didn't get anything. I wanted to see something, but it's just the nature of the beast. Like I said, these past two E3s for me have just not been the greatest. Overall, like I didn't, I saw very little stuff that really like um caught my attention. Uh, Even like Square's always like been a household name for me, and even Square's conference here was just like, bro, what is this, man? We got a bunch of remakes and remasters and all this, and then the last they show us chaos. I guess that's the closest thing we got to some Mortal Kombat action. Dude was just mad and doing fatalities on the enemies the whole time. But yeah, no fighting games did not surprise me at all, guys. I would have liked to see maybe an indie fighter or something, but hey, I guess we'll have to. Sony still has their conference coming up, so we possibly could see something then. I'm personally hoping that Sony comes and knocks it out the park with something. But yeah, as far as and going back to Street Fighter 6, it probably won't be maybe end of this year, early next year until we see something on Street Fighter 6. Just being honest, and I have hopes for it, but seeing something like a Marvel 4, it might happen, but I ain't gonna hold my breath for it. So yeah, in terms of fighting games to E3, it's kind of disappointing, man.
Wait, so when is the Sony press conference? Do you remember?
I want to say it's like because I mean I don't know what's the reason for them doing it separate than E3, but I want to say it's like a few weeks out now or something. I'm not sure, or whenever it's gonna happen. But that I mean, it makes me it's like okay, y'all gotta come with us on and show me something, man. Punch me in the face, man. Hit me with something so hard that I can't even just I'm knocked out for like a few hours. But
It's funny. Like I saw this one tweet up on Twitter, the what you call it during E3, and it was like, was it like Xbox? Was it like Xbox's best? What you call it? I guess their Xbox's best E3 conference was E3 2021. And then like Sony's best E3 conference was the Xbox conference of 2013 when they announced the Xbox One the first time. So I was like, oh well, yeah, like this year, so Sony didn't really show a whole lot at E3. But then again, if if anybody at Sony feels the way that I do about E3, then it doesn't surprise me because it's like I've always I mean, I think the last time I ever actually sat down with like 100%, like I'm going to sit here and watch E3. The last time I sat down straight up and just watched E3 was when they announced Watch Dogs, the first one. The when they announced Watch Dogs, the very first Watch Dogs was the last time I sat down and watched like an E3. I'm like, oh man, this is going to be great. since then, I haven't done it, and I haven't regretted it, to be honest, because more likely than not, they just like. I mean, I really like fighting games, and more likely than not, they don't really. It always seems like fighting games kind of take a back seat, and I felt that they were going to do that this year, so I was not surprised in the least when we really. I mean, we didn't really get a whole lot like in terms of like fighting games, if anything, you know, it was like, I mean, I would say that I was disappointed, but this is exactly what I expected. So I'm not sure if I can say that I was 100% disappointed. Just that I was just kind of like, well, E3, you pretty much met my expectations in terms of what was going to happen. So, you know, I mean, there were some cool things, I guess, that were announced. But like I said, I don't really watch the whole of the E3 conference anymore because I'm just kind of like, I mean, number one, I'm not really expecting a whole lot. Number two, I'm just kind of, more often than not, everybody else is going to be talking about all the most important stuff, like the things that like really get people hype will always rise to the top in terms of what's discussed on social media and videos and stuff like that. So you're gonna like more often than not, like you're gonna be like, okay, well, what are people talking about on Twitter other than Guilty Gear Strive? Then it's like, oh, okay, well, that happened, and that happened, and that happened. All right, well, guess that's all that I needed to know about. I mean, because like Mr. Gaming Lift said, in terms of like Square Enix, we're talking about a bunch of like, you know, remasters and remakes and stuff like that, and then maybe like one or two new IP. But even those, I'm kind of like, I'm gonna have to wait and see. I'm gonna have to wait and see on some of this stuff, you know, like just in general, it's just like, so nah, man, I'm not surprised. It doesn't surprise me that we didn't get in hardly any like fighting game stuff this year for E3. Maybe they'll do better next year. I doubt it. You know, I mean, more often than not, if let's be honest, like more often than not, if they decide, hey, we're going to announce a fighting game, like big fighting game this year, like I mean, I'm not saying that this is going to happen, but it might happen at like the Tokyo Game Show or something like that. Like it might happen at like something like that. But E3, like people, I guess it seems it's almost like if you're like watch F1 racing, it's like, you know, they have like the qualifiers, you know, beforehand, and then they have the actual race. It seems like less like E3 is a racing now. It's less like E3 is more like a qualifier now, where everybody's kind of sandbagging, and then like everybody basically outside of E3, everybody already has like their own conferences now. So if there's going to be a fighting game that's going to like really bring in attention, they're probably going to announce it at like the Xbox like conference or the Sony conference or Tokyo Game Show or like a Nintendo Direct or something like that, you know? They're just like giving you just barely enough to keep you interested, to keep the FGC interested, and then it's like, hey, forget about this, come to our actual thing, and then we'll show you what we really have. So hopefully it's going to be like that instead of, you know, we didn't show up for E3 and show up with fighting games for E3 and yeah, that's it. So we'll see what happens.